Hey everyone, and welcome to your carrier update presented by PowerFleet. So it's the last carrier update of the year, so I think it's a good time for us to look back and see where we've come from over the last 12 months or so, just to see where we're going. So behind me, the Outbound Tender Volume Index for the United States. We've had a bumpy ride this year, so starting off with a pretty mild January. Well, it really was a typical seasonal pattern in January. We had muted volumes throughout February. Things picked up in March. Came into a softer than anticipated peak in the summer. Volumes did not really exceed expectations there, well under 2018, which you see in the green here. And then the May volumes as well were really disappointing. It really set up for a hard year for carriers, with missing out on that big peak season, which normally fuels and keeps carriers going throughout some of the slower months. And then things started to pick up here at the end of the year, like towards August into September, volumes exceeded 2018 levels. Again, 2018, big robust year for most people, thinking that you can't possibly compare it to last year. Well, we did, and we broke through that level about right here. Capacity still didn't really show any significant tightness, but the demand side was definitely there. October, November, we kind of smoothed out a little bit, and then into December, we really exceeded expectations after the Thanksgiving holiday, with volumes averaging roughly 6 to 7% higher throughout most of the month of December, excluding this holiday period here, where the holiday was a little bit further up in the month versus last year. So capacity itself looks like a big smile. Earlier in the year, here you got your Reefer Outbound Tender Rejection Index starting off pretty high in the early part of January, and then falling rapidly throughout January, and then leveling out in February, and really started to degrade throughout most of the spring months. So April, May, very disappointing in terms of capacity. So we really saw spot rates hit their lowest levels in multiple years throughout these months right here. Then things started to tighten up, as we normally would see in the month of June, July. We had that nice seasonal little peak there. Reefer demand really had a nice little peak, but van demand not as strong as we would anticipate. Tender rejection rates hovering right around 5–6%. And then we go into September, October, where we saw a little bit more activity, and then really didn't see the market truly wake up until the end of the year, right now, in December, around Thanksgiving, with that contracted holiday period. Reefer demand, of course, or reefer capacity, was a little bit more volatile throughout the months. But again, highest value of the year hit on Christmas Day at 14.25%. Pretty significant moment, because what I'm going to show you next is this a shift in direction of the freight market? So the reason we look at the freight market peak seasons to judge just what the direction of the overall freight market is doing. Behind me, I have the DAT Long Haul Freight Rate Index behind me, and the lines that you see on here are the distances between and the directions between the two seasonal peaks of summer and winter. You see anything in red here means that we've had declining momentum. So the peak in the winter was lower than the peak in the summer back here in 2015. And if everybody recalls, 2016, a softer year. But by the end of 2016, the two directions had changed. We now had a lower summer peak and a higher winter peak. The market was starting to turn back up and heat back up. And then, of course, 2017 into 2018, one of the biggest jumps in history, 20% rate increase. From July of 2017 into the end of 2017. And then again, we had this huge peak in the summer of 2018 before declining rapidly through the end of 2018, which I thought was a very interesting fact, because most people just consider all of 2018 to be this big, huge, robust year, when actually by the end, the second half of that year was actually a contractionary period. Right now, we're sitting about flat. So the market itself, again, a lot of these rates haven't been fully actualized. We have not seen the full materialization of the winter peak just yet in the freight market. So this is expected to go up a little bit more, especially with tender rejection rates hitting their highest levels of the year. So what I'm really expecting to see is the market shifting its direction. Maybe not going to blow up like it did in 2017, 2018, but it's certainly a positive sign for carriers looking into 2020 in terms of direction. Now, does that mean that you need to go ahead and start buying a bunch of trucks again and counting on October to be or January to be super strong? No, it's not. Behind me, the Cass Freight Shipments Index, all the shipments in the country in the surface transportation, LTL, truckload, rail, any of that. Every single January, you look here, every single January, volumes decline. It's because it's a slow month seasonally. Don't expect it to be super robust, but the general direction of the freight market right now looks a lot more positive than it did this time last year. And that'll do it for today's Carrier Update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.